Hey everybody, we're going to give just a couple of minutes for everyone to get in and get settled. Just take a couple of minutes here at the beginning for everybody to join us on the webinar. I'm so excited. This is so far our best attended webinar, and I know that I have so many of you guys on social media to thank for that. I appreciate you sharing this with all of your friends. I appreciate you coming. And so many of you I know personally, and so I'm really nervous and really excited that that we're all going to be here together, and we're going to be going through some really uh, like not so fun stuff to talk about estate planning, but it's necessary, and I promise it will be as painless as it possibly can be. So let's give just another couple of minutes for everyone to come in, and then we'll get started. So I do see that we've got some more folks that are joining us. And so I'm going to just let them join in. I'm going to go ahead, and you'll notice that throughout this presentation, I'm going to post some polls for you guys to answer. You can answer those polls. It's a good way to sort of stay engaged. I'll give you what the results are as we're going along. So you can see, I know that everybody wants to participate in the polls, so that's completely fine. Don't feel obligated. But you could still think about what your answers would be as we go through it. And I am also, you can feel free to post any questions that you have during the presentation in the question and answer section. If you want to ask questions as we're going along, I'll try to answer them as we go, but also at the end, I'll go back through. So anything that you think of that pops in that you is like your pressing question that you want to know the answer to today, if I don't cover it through the presentation, be sure to pop that question in there and I'll be sure to answer it for you. And then if we don't have enough time, you can always feel free to schedule an appointment with me to have a one-on-one session to learn a little bit more about your own personal estate planning as well. And if you stick around towards the end of the seminar here, you're going to get a special opportunity to schedule a consult with us here at the firm. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. We've got a pretty good crowd going so far. And so I don't want to delay it too much. I value you guys taking your time here in the middle of the day. I know that for a lot of you, this is your lunch hour. For others of you, this is falling right in between a nap time for your kiddos or before you've got to do school pickup. So we'll go ahead and jump in as quickly as we can so that you can get all the information that you need. So let me tell you a little bit more about myself. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Shaughness Mercer, and I've been a family law and estate planning attorney here in North Carolina for 19 years. And my husband is my law partner, Christopher Autry. He has been practicing law for about as long as me, I think a couple of years less. I met him when he was a law student and lured him to stick around this area. And we're married. We've got two little boys, an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old. And we live here in Wake County, North Carolina. We spend a lot of time down at the coast in Oak Island as well. And really, when we were thinking about what we wanted to do and how we wanted to help out our community, we thought that it was really important that we serve all of the people in North Carolina who are looking for being able to find a peaceful alternative to some of the less peaceful ways that that estate planning can go. And so in forming our firm, we wanted to help families at all stages in their life at periods of transition so that they could have as much peace as possible. And so we help families who are just starting out, who are forming relationship agreements like cohabitation agreements and prenups. We help families who are going through the transition of separating and divorcing. So we help families that are in that situation as well to find a peaceful way to do that. And we help families who are doing estate planning. So that means at the beginning of adulthood, helping to make sure that that when your kids turn 18, that they're creating those initial documents so that you can help them to do what they need to do as they head off into their life. And then helping families through periods of transition for creating their estate plans to make sure that they've got a plan in place for their kids and their family if something were to happen to them. And then helping folks as they get older and their life changes through periods of transition to make sure that we're updating those estate plans to keep them as up to date as possible. So for us, it's important that we make it as convenient and easy for our clients as possible. So a lot of what you'll hear is how we are able to tailor the experience to you and make sure that we're meeting you where you are, literally sending out a notary to you and our witnesses to you so that you're not having to drive into Holly Springs. And we have connections all across the state to make sure that we can make this as seamless as possible. But we're always glad to meet in person too. So I know that we've got a lot of folks joining us from the Triangle area and that a lot of folks joining us from the Brunswick, New Hanover County area as well. So we're glad to schedule meetings with any of you in person, as well as making it as easy as possible otherwise. But I think that we've got a good crowd going now. And so again, as I said in the beginning, if you've got questions, if there's something that's pressing that you want to know the answer to, feel free to put that in the Q&A section down at the bottom of your Zoom link. And I'll be able to see that and I can make sure that I answer that question as we go through. But let's go ahead and get started. So the things that we're going to cover today are, I've got some like corny names and some corny titles that I've used. So just bear with me and cringe at the jokes as we go along. It's the way that I deal with talking about death. For me, this is always a tough subject. Like I said, I've got young kids at home too. So it's not something that I enjoy talking about, but it's something that I think is really necessary. So estate planning isn't super glamorous. It's not sexy. It's not, what you want to spend your Wednesday afternoon talking about, I'm sure. But it's making sure what's even less glamorous than that is leaving your loved ones in chaos. And so we don't want to do that. So by the end of the session, you're going to be able to adult like a pro. You're going to have all of the tools that you need to know what you need to do to protect your family. So we're going to talk about estate planning MVP, powers of attorney, living wills, beneficiary blunders, things that I've seen that sort of go wrong, ways that we can avoid that. A digital life cleanup. I know that this is a big one that that a lot of you guys have told me personally is really interesting to you. So I'll make sure that we save lots of time to do that. But my first question for you guys, I'm gonna bear with me as I go ahead and share our first poll. So the first question, you should see a pop-up there, is this is your estate planning MVP. Be honest. Do you actually have a will or are you just winging it? So how many of you guys, and when I say will, I'm using will because that's the word that we all know and are familiar with. It could be any estate plan. You could have a trust. You could have a revocable living trust. You could have all sorts of, irrevocable things set up. You could have all of this stuff lined out. And if so, like, thank you for coming anyway. I really appreciate that. Or maybe you have like a basic will, but you know that there's some more complex tools now that you have children that you need to look at, or now that you're nearing retirement age that you need to look at. So it looks like we've got a pretty decent split between the nope, I'm living dangerously crowd and the, of course, like I've got my will, it's locked and loaded. And I know that within the I've got my will, it's locked and loaded folks that, that there's a lot of room for improvement and then wanting to make sure that even if you've got your will that you're thinking about all of the other things that, that you need to be thinking about with estate planning. So I'm going to go ahead and in that poll, we've gotten some good results there. About 67% of you say that you're living dangerously, and 33% of you say that you've got your will locked and loaded. And so, what I want to talk to you about is like, what even is a will? I think that there's some confusion about that and what are the options there when it comes to having an estate plan. So a will, is that very basic document that says what you want to have happen with your stuff after you die. And so when we talk about what you want to have happen, I know a lot of you guys have young kids. We're not writing a check to the kids. We're not giving them, all of your retirement accounts. We're not giving them like the keys to the house to take over. So with that will, within the will document, we create what's called a testamentary trust. So if you have minor children that are going to inherit from you, then we set up a testamentary trust, which says who you want to be in charge of taking care of the finances for the kids. We also, for our clients who have young children, prepare some guardianship documents, some basic documents to let the court know, hey, this is who I would want to be in charge of my kiddos if something were to happen to me. And we do that so that, right from the beginning, when your kids are really young, you've got that plan set out. And those plans change throughout the years, and that's fine too. We can always go in and we can change who those people are that we name, but we want to make sure at a very basic level, we know who's going to be in charge of the kids for where they're going to live, and also who's going to be in charge of taking care of the finances. And so for a lot of people, those are two different sets of people. It may be that you want for your sister to be the person who's in charge of raising your kids. You think that she would do a really good job with that. But you know that, your husband's brother, their uncle, would be amazing at managing the finances because he's just a whiz with finances. And so you would want to put him in charge of the money. That's fine too. It could be the same person. It could be different people. Every family is different. And one of the things that you're going to hear me say throughout this presentation is like the key to all of this is telling the people that you're going to trust, that you're going to give these responsibilities to, what the responsibilities are. And even more importantly than that, sometimes is telling the people who you're not choosing why you made the choice not to choose them, to be that person. And so, this is really complicated, I think, when it comes to when we're talking about young kids in particular, because a lot of us have parents who are aging and maybe they're not your choice. Maybe they're not the person that you would designate to raise your children if you weren't here. And it doesn't mean that you don't love them. It doesn't mean that they're not amazing grandparents, but the limitations that they have to be able to keep up with the busy schedule that all of our young kids have. So we want to make sure that we're keeping those things in mind when we're having those conversations with people, that we're letting them know the why. Because the whole reason why you guys are in here today, the whole reason why we do what we do is to avoid families from having unknown confusion, chaos, and friction if something terrible were to happen, right? Like that is hard enough for families to deal with. You don't want to create a situation to where, your mom is telling your spouse's sister, there's no way, that my daughter would have wanted that. There's no way that she would have done that. And then they want to start fighting and then they escalate things. So with doing the estate planning, talking to your people throughout, making sure that people understand why you've made the choices that you've made is so important. And I know that a lot of times older generations of folks that I encounter, they think that money's not something that you talk about, that wills should be private, that people shouldn't know what they're going to inherit until you're gone. And I think that that's really a missed opportunity to connect with people and explain why you've made the choices that you've made, and have those loving conversations during your life. And then the other piece of that is, if you're concerned that somebody's going to kill you because they're going to inherit a bunch of money from you, I would say that maybe that's somebody that you don't want to inherit from you, and that maybe we need to rethink that decision, right? So the people that we're choosing should be people that we trust, and people that we can have those really honest conversations with from the beginning. And if not, or if that's hard for you, that's certainly something that we can help you with. That's something that I think is important for families to have that. And I can tell you, I've seen the other side of that where young families don't make those plans and something unexpected happens, and then the family is left trying to figure out what's going on. I was engaged in a custody case early in my career where a grandmother and an aunt, a very similar situation to what I was talking about, right? That they were engaged in litigation for years over these children, trying to figure out what should happen to them because the parents didn't leave any plans for what should happen. And unfortunately, it tore this family apart. Folks who could have worked together to share time with the kids, that somebody could have been the primary caretaker, and knowing that we wanted grandmother to still be involved to have visitation. But because they both really firmly believed that their loved one wanted them to fight and wanted them to get control of those children because they thought that that's what was best, and they were dishonoring their dead child if not. It caused for this really beautiful, loving family to not be able to get along. And there's winners and losers in court, unfortunately. And that's one of those things that once you expose your family to that sort of turmoil, it's sometimes there's no way back. So the point of this is to create peace so that your family doesn't end up in that situation. So that's a really long explanation of a will. And a trust is just a little bit more complex. A trust, a trust is more complex in the creation, but it's a little bit more simple on the back end. So we talked about these kids and how we have to create the testamentary trust within the will for what should happen. So the court actually, you do have to go in and have some supervision by the court about how that's administered when it's within the will. If we create a trust outside of a will, just a revocable living trust is the most usual tool that we use for families that have young children. It works out really well and can be a really elegant solution for families so that they can just, the trustee is empowered to go ahead and start doing those things that they need to for the kids financially to make sure that they're provided for. And that's taking place outside of the court system. So when we create that trust, we're creating the ability to administer all of those things that you want without having to go into the court like you would in a will situation to ask the court to do these things. So especially with young children, we do the analysis with every family individually to see what's the right tools for you. But most of the time, this is trust. And again, it's one of those things we like to keep it as simple as possible and weigh through those options with you. So I would say that if you don't have a will in place, if you don't have any estate planning at all, you need to start thinking about what that looks like. And that doesn't always mean with an attorney. I do think that, I'm an attorney. So I think that working with an attorney is a way to make sure that your wishes get conveyed in a way that's going to be legally enforceable and in a way that's going to accomplish what it is that you think that you're accomplishing. But I do think that having at least a consultation to get the specifics for what you should be doing is going to be important. But we're going to spend some more time through the rest of this presentation talking about some really tangible things that you can do on your own. I saw one question come in that was about an out-of-state will. So it says, like, is this enforceable? Is this something that we could enforce in North Carolina, even though we did it in another state? And the answer is sort of, it depends, which is a typical lawyer answer for you. But it's true that, your will may be valid, but we've got to think about how it's going to be construed within the laws of North Carolina. And there is some variation from state to state. And so you'd want to have that will at least reviewed by an attorney in the state that you're in, especially if you're settled and this is where you intend to stay. Just to see if there's anything that's been left out. And then we like to update some of the other documents that we're about to talk about. We just like to update everything to make it state specific and have all of the magic words that North Carolina likes for you to have in your estate planning documents. So, especially for the power of attorney, which is the next thing that we're going to talk about, that is, North Carolina is very specific in the way that they like to see those forms written. So we're going to move on to the next poll. And that next question is, who's your ride or die power of attorney? So right now, what is a power of attorney? I'm going to explain that a little bit to you guys. But if you have a power of attorney, tell me who that is. Is it your best friend? Is it your spouse? Or you have no idea? And if you don't have a power of attorney, I want you to answer this question of who you think would be the best person to do that. So when we say power of attorney, what does that mean? So there's two different types of powers of attorney in North Carolina. I love that somebody chose no idea, but definitely not my cousin Chad. There's two different types of powers of attorney, just like I explained how there's sort of two different types of guardianship that we talk about with kiddos, right? That we talk about guardian of the person and we talk about guardian of the money. Well, with powers of attorney, we have a financial power of attorney, like who's going to control my stuff and keep my business running for me. And then we have a healthcare power of attorney, which is who's going to help make medical decisions for me if I'm not able to make medical decisions for myself. And so just like with the kids that I was explaining earlier, with the power of attorney, sometimes it's the same person. Sometimes it's your spouse. And so most people, think about their spouse as a potential power of attorney. Because y'all are on the same team. You guys are running the business together. And when I say the business, I mean the business of life, right? Like who pays the bills, who's going to make sure that your bills get paid if something were to happen, who's going to make sure that if you are collecting payment from your employer or you're collecting rents for property that you own, who's going to be the person who makes sure that those things are happening and has the authority, the legal authority to go out to the banks, to go out to people who owe you money and to collect that money for you and keep your life going for you. And so a power of attorney is something that we talk about a lot of times in periods of incapacitation. So meaning when you can't make those decisions for yourself. But also a power of attorney, a financial power of attorney, it might be that you are overseas and you're having your best life. You're on like a 2-month trek, in a remote part of, Australia, like, and you can't be, nobody can get in touch with you and somebody needs to keep your finances going. So a power of attorney is a really powerful tool. It could be that you're in the mountains and you can't get back to sign a piece of paper. Who's got the authority to sign the piece of paper for you? So it's a very useful and durable tool that we can use in all sorts of situations. Some people choose to have a financial power of attorney that takes effect immediately. And it just always is that if you want for someone to transact business on your behalf, that they've got that authority and power to do that. Some people don't want to do that. They want what we call a springing power of attorney. And a springing power of attorney only becomes valid. It can only be used if you are incapacitated and not able to make choices on your own. And again, this is one of those things that we talk about really specifically individually with clients to help them evaluate which option is best for them. That's the financial power of attorney. And the healthcare power of attorney is who's making the medical choices for you. And this is something that does take effect when you're not able to make those choices for yourself. So, you know how earlier I said, like most people choose their spouse because you're on the same team and you are transacting business together. Yes, for the financial power of attorney. For the healthcare power of attorney, some people don't choose their spouse because they feel like it might be too difficult for their spouse to make those hard decisions that they're really wishing to have made for them, the decisions that they believe are the right decisions for them, if they're not able to choose their own medical care. And so they might choose someone else to do that, right? Like that might be where your best friend might be the person that you tap to say, I don't want for my spouse to have to do this. I think that you should be the person to do this for me because you're the right person. So cousin Chad here on the survey, the reason why we've got this cousin Chad listed is because, everybody's got that one relative, or maybe not everybody, but lots of us have that one relative, right? Who's sort of like on the periphery. Maybe, you don't see them very often, but they're always just sort of lurking around, made some poor decisions in life, but always seem to be like ready, willing to help whenever there's something that's motivating in there for them. And so I really like to make sure that we're keeping cousin Chad out of the mix of being a relied on decision maker, because I've seen what happens when the I'll just do it person gets picked when they're not the right person. So just because Chad's available, wants to, and is ready and willing to do it doesn't mean that he's the right person for the job. And so we try to have these in-depth conversations to talk about who is the right person, not just who's the most convenient person that you could choose to take on these roles, but who is the right person. And again, this is one of those situations where you want to have this conversation ahead of time and, let your spouse know why you're not choosing them if you're not. Let your best friend know if she's not that choice for you to make the decisions, and not because you don't trust her, but because you wouldn't want to put her, in that situation, or because she's got a lot going on in her life, or because she's not good with money. And so you want to choose somebody who you know that you can rely on financially and not put her in a hard position that would make her uncomfortable. So in our poll, it looks like most of you guys are choosing your spouse to be your power of attorney. We've got about 67% again picking the spouse. So there's a contingency of you guys that are running as a pack together, it seems. We've got 17% of y'all that are choosing your bestie to be your power of attorney. And then one of you might not know who your power of attorney is, but you know that it isn't going to be Chad. So I like to hear that. I like that everybody is well aware that we shouldn't just be choosing somebody because they're convenient or available. And I'll tell you, like this gets to be more challenging. Again, I told you earlier, we handle families that are in transition. So when our clients who are divorcing are updating their estate planning documents, sometimes it's hard, and we really have to spend some time thinking about who that right person is. And there are corporate fiduciaries. There are people that you can pay to take on the role of a power of attorney for you if that's something that you need to do. We avoid that for most of our clients. It tends to be that when we spend a little bit of time thinking, we're able to come up with who those people are. It's just sometimes a matter of thinking outside the box and then checking with those people who maybe aren't the first like natural choice that you would think of, but checking with them and talking to them a little bit about what the expectations are and see if it's something that they're willing to do. All right, so I do have some homework for you from this one. I've got an action tip for you. The action tip from our discussion about wills and trusts were you're going to schedule at least an appointment to find out about all of the stuff that you should be doing with your own a will and trust. And we're going to post a link for that. I'm actually going to go ahead and take this moment to post that link in the chat for you guys so that you can easily book. And we do have a special offer for those of you who are spending your 1 o'clock hour with us today. We are offering half price consultations. So normally, our fee for the consultation is going to be $150, but we're offering $75 consultations. And if any of you guys have worked with us with family law cases, you know that the estate planning consultation fee is significantly lower than our family law consultation fees. But again, we think that it's really important that all families be able to create an estate plan. And we understand that sometimes getting the motivation up to do an estate plan can be hard. And so we want to take away those financial barriers as much as we can, because we do feel very passionately that families need to have an estate plan and need to get started. So I encourage you to use that link that I've posted in the chat, which I've actually now have posted so that y'all can see it, not just me. And consider making that appointment. Check and see what fits with your schedule. We can do appointments on Zoom. We can do appointments over the phone if you want to. If you want to come into the office, I'd love to have you come in and sit down here with me. It's a beautiful office here in downtown Holly Springs, if that's something that you're interested in. If you want to catch up when I'm in Oak Island, I'd love to set up a time with you over in Oak Island to meet in person as well. So feel free just to let me know what you want to do, and I'm glad to have that appointment with you. All right. So I'm checking to see if we have any more questions. So I see that I've got a question that has come in about living wills, which is actually my next question that I'm going to be covering here. So you are right on target. And I will go ahead and post that poll for you about living wills. So the question that I have to start this one is, if you couldn't make decisions for yourself, would your family respect your wishes, no problem, debate it for years, or I haven't told them my wishes, so there would be chaos? So again, this goes back to talk early and talk often about your wishes with your family. But I mean, I guess like the bigger question is, what even is a living will? Do you even know what I'm talking about when I say a living will? I think that there's a lot of confusion because we have a last will and testament that we were talking about earlier, which is what happens with your stuff when you're dead. But a living will is so it's one of those things that in North Carolina, that's what we call it, as a living will. You'll hear it called other things in other states as well. The point of it though is it lets your family know what your wishes would be in terms of staying alive. If you're in a position to where you can't make those medical decisions for yourself. So a lot of times this is when you're in a persistent vegetative state where there's no coming back. What would you want for your family to do in that situation? And this to me, like doing this can provide so much peace for your loved ones if something were to happen, because they can know that the choices that they're making are the choices that you want to have made. It's a really tricky place to be. And like I said about spouses earlier, sometimes it's so hard. I mean, I've sat with clients in my office and thinking about having to make that call for your spouse. Like it can be enough to where, spouses say that they don't want to make that choice. But I do find that a lot of times when I tell people about the living will and having, a healthcare directive that lets your spouse know what it is that you would want to have happen, that brings a lot of peace, because then you're just following through on, your person's what their expressed interest was. You're not having to play a guessing game. You're not having to figure it out. And I wonder how many of you guys have either been in that situation with your own family, with aging grandparents or parents, or friends or loved ones that unexpectedly something has happened to them, and you see the turmoil that it can really cause when somebody's got that power, right? We've either chosen that person who has that power in our powers of attorney, and so there is somebody to make those decisions with the doctors about what happens, or you haven't chosen, and so the state has decided for you who's going to make those choices, right? And so in all of these cases, if you don't choose, the state will say who makes those choices. And that might be a hard thing for the state to figure out. And so that might take time that's valuable time that's passing, in the meantime, but it doesn't matter if you've chosen them or not, right? Like if you don't have your wishes written out, and if you haven't communicated that to your family, what your wishes are, it can be really hard for somebody who is grieving and really struggling with a potential loss of a child, or a spouse or a best friend, to say like, no, there's no way that that's the right thing. I can't believe that you would make that choice, either for her to continue to suffer or for her to no longer have a chance, right? Depending on what side you're coming from. Um, it's hard, and sometimes like in that grief, people lash out at one another, but it does make it easier for family and friends to know if you've laid it out really clearly and you've said what it is. So I want for you to say what it is. I want for you to have these discussions about what your options are, when it comes to end of life care. So a big one that people don't think about, and it's terrible to think about, but would you want hydration? Would you want nutrition if you were coming to the end, and you weren't able to communicate anymore, you weren't having any quality of life anymore? Like what would you want in those final moments? And so for, people choose different things. Some people say, I would want for my end to come as quickly as possible. So in addition to give me all of the pain meds, to make me comfortable, provide me with all of the respite that you can from that, don't prolong this. No hydration, no nutrition. For some people, they say, I can't imagine not having hydration, so no nutrition, but I want to, I want to continue to receive hydration until I pass. And those are some hard conversations to have. It's like not date night conversation. So I always tell people that when we're getting into this estate planning stuff, you really do set aside a time, where you have these heavy conversations with each other. You send the kids away, to stay with the grandparents for the weekend if you've got that luxury, or getting a sitter and really just spending that time, the two of you, or you wait till after bedtime. But you really need to spend some time having that conversation with your spouse or your friends or your parents, or your children, your loved ones that are going to be helping to make these choices, so that you can choose, you can explain to them, you can talk through with them, what their thoughts are on it. I've had people that sit in my office and say, I don't care. Like, what's going to be easier for my spouse? I'm worried about how they're going to be processing my death. And so I want for them to be able to make those choices. And so sometimes that's what we say. Sometimes we say, like, this is what I think my priorities are, or just let them decide. And that's an okay choice too. It really depends on you, and it depends on what you're wanting. So, when it comes down to it, these are the hard conversations, to have, but this to me is one of the most important ones. And this is one of the ones that, I think is the sort of the easiest to do. And once you make your choices for what it is, to take care of it. And it looks like that most of you guys, feel like that your family would be respectful of your wishes, no problem. Like 60% of you guys, 20% of you guys are saying that they debate it for years, that it would be like one of those situations to where nobody really, could agree on what that is. And you're worried that they wouldn't follow through with your wishes, if you just say them. And so again, that's why we put it in writing. That's why we put it in the living will, so that there is no debate. It is there. And then the other option, it looks like another 17% of you guys are, saying that you haven't had the conversation yet. So my homework for you folks is to start having the conversation. And look, like, Christmas is this amazing time. We've got this whole holiday season, lots of holidays coming up. We've got Christmas, we've got Hanukkah, we've got New Year's, we've got Kwanzaa, all sorts of holidays where people come together as a family. And this is not fun, but it is necessary conversation. And it sure is better than politics for y'all to be talking about, at the dinner table. So, if you've got aging parents, I would highly recommend, like, just planting the seed over this holiday season, that this is something that they need to deal with. This is something they need to talk about, and that you need to know what they are wanting, right? So it's not that you're being greedy or you're wanting the money, but you want to know so that you can do the right thing and follow through. I recently posted on social media. I was reading my Apple News one morning and I saw this article from that somebody had written about an interview with Warren Buffett about his estate planning. And I'm like, well, that's, a nerdy coincidence. And he actually said that that's his advice to anybody at any level of income who's doing their estate planning, is that you give your will to your kids and you have them to read it now. You make sure that they understand what questions they might have. You talk through why you made the choices that you made now so that there's not friction down the road, that they know eyes wide open what's happening and what's coming to them and what's not coming to them at this point in time. So I really like that, and I think that that's really good advice for all of us, is to have these uncomfortable conversations now to be able to have peace down the road. And there is a lot of peace and beauty that comes through these conversations. I get to witness it firsthand when I meet with folks. I get to see how much people love each other when they're talking about how they're going to do their estate plan, right? They talk about taking care of their loved ones. They talk about making things easy for their loved ones. And it's really such an act of love to like go through this uncomfortable, hard stuff now and to take care of all these things so that your kids like have stability, so that family understands and knows how they can, continue to live on that legacy that you want for future generations to have, right? It's an act of love for your spouse, for you guys to get your finances in order, and for you to sit down and like put all the money in a pile so that you guys all know where everything is, and who's going to get what and what you guys have. All right, so I'm gonna start moving a little faster because I've been talking a lot and I know that we want to get to the digital life. Um, my next and really one of my most actionable things that I'm gonna share that you will be able to do immediately when you get off of this call. I'm gonna share this poll. Is when is the last time you updated your beneficiaries? And on this, I'm talking about your life insurance, your 401k, bank accounts, anything that you need that you can give to somebody through a beneficiary. When is the last time that you've gone through and looked? So for many of us, when we start a new job, we pick who is going to get our life insurance policy, our work sponsored life insurance policy if something were to happen to us. We choose who our 401k beneficiaries would be if something happened to us, but really we don't think about it after that. So it looks like that about 60% of you guys are on top of it. You could tell me right now, if I asked you exactly who your beneficiaries are, what percentage your contingent beneficiaries are going to get if something happened to you and your beneficiary. Then there's like 40% of y'all that say it's been ages ago and you were wondering if you need to check. And the answer is yes, you need to check. Especially if it's been a while since you've done it. Like a lot of us, I know when you're going through those regular employee benefits enrollment periods every year, you just sort of click through those really quickly. Don't. You can also go look up the accounts. And I'll tell you, like, my husband for years, I love that man so much. He is wonderful. He is an excellent attorney. But when it comes to, um, you know, those employee benefit stuff, I'm the person in my family that does that. So it didn't matter where he was working. When he was working at the state, when he was a prosecutor, when he was working for the clinical research organization for the years that he was negotiating contracts for these big companies, right? Like, he didn't pay attention to his beneficiaries. He didn't pay attention to which health insurance was offered and all that. I'm the one who took care of that in my family. So if you're the person who takes care of that in your family, or if you think that you should be the person that takes care of that in your family, then let your spouse know that you need for them to help you to get logged in to the system. You need to sit there with them, and you guys need to like go through and actually choose and make sure that the right people have been chosen. Because funny story, when my husband and I got married, we, went through all of this stuff again, and we were making sure that we were updating these things because that's like a life-changing event. He had not designated a beneficiary on his retirement account. So it was really important, right? Like, so who would get it? We don't know. And I'll tell you, like, who would get it? We don't know. Is the state has a estate plan for you if you do not choose, and that estate plan is to follow what the North Carolina general statutes say for who's going to get your money, and it's going to have to go through court to get there, and it's going to take a little bit of time. So a real easy way to avoid that happening is to just choose your beneficiaries now. This is like the easiest, most actionable plan. Now, I will add a caveat to this to say you need to talk to your estate planning attorney, who is hopefully going to be me, to make sure that this is the right way that we want for it to pass. So sometimes when you have minor children, your backup beneficiary, if something were to happen to your spouse, like a lot of times the spouse is the first person that we're choosing, that backup beneficiary, we might have that to be the trust that we create for the kids, so the money goes that way, because it can make life way more complicated if you name your children directly as beneficiaries and they're under 18. So you want to have that conversation. You want to go through that analysis with your attorney to see who the right people are to name as beneficiaries, but you need to name beneficiaries. This is like so many times, even when we do these big fancy estate plans, there are some accounts that we have passed just directly to the beneficiaries through the designation that we set up. It's important for you to know that even if we do this big fancy estate plan, but you name someone else as the beneficiary, that's who's getting the money from that account. So people who forget, who you've got all these rollover 401ks from these old jobs that you've forgotten about, if you don't change those beneficiaries, it can cause massive trouble. And usually what's going to happen is the person named is going to get that money even if it's a former spouse, unless you've done some things in your divorce to stop that from happening. But for the most part, they're going to get your money. And so your kids, your current spouse could be left out in the cold because you had this rollover 401k from years ago that's just been floating out there, and your ex-spouse is still named as the beneficiary of that account. So that's why it's important. That's why it's important you know your finances and you get your money in order too. I could not recommend enough to work with a financial advisor, consolidate those rollover 401ks, figure out what that could look like for you to make your pile consolidated. And it's so much easier for transitioning assets, like for yourself in the future, if you want to do something different with your money. It's nice to see like where it all is and have it all together. But then also, if something were to happen to you, it's so much easier for your family when there's like one financial advisor that can be a point person and can help to transition all of those accounts the way that they need to go. So again, that's one of those things that we work with our clients. We give recommendations and referrals for financial advisors. I think that it is a very adulting sort of thing that I put off for years. I gave you the funny story about my husband not having a beneficiary, but I had rollover 401ks from previous employers just sort of floating out in, never land, until just like a couple of years ago, when I realized, oh my goodness, I'm giving all of this advice to other people and I haven't done these things myself. So again, highly recommend. This is a really easy thing that you can do. Call your financial advisor if you are working with them. Ask for a list of your beneficiaries. Let them know if you want to update your beneficiaries to make sure that it's the people that you want for it to be. All right, and now we are moving on to talking about tidying up your digital life. So this to me is this sort of innovative and new area that estate planning attorneys, frankly, have just not put very much effort or time into helping clients with until recent years, when we realized that so much of our world revolves around our online accounts and our online legacies. And I'm sure that many of you guys, just like me, have seen when people pass, when somebody takes over their Facebook account, what that looks like. One of my friends from high school passed, and I constantly see somebody posting about like buy some fake Oakleys or something on their Facebook and like tagging them and everything so that all their friends see this stuff. And it's being posted and everything. And, you know, I don't know about you, but I don't want when my friends from high school are thinking about me, they're thinking about fake Oakleys. So I would like for my legacy to mean a little bit more than that, than some scammer trying to make a buck off of my friends and family. So I do think that it's really important that we actually put some intentionality and some meaning into how we're going to manage our digital world when we're gone. And so here's just a silly question. I just launched our final poll. I thank you for sticking with me this long. But this question is, who's going to get your Netflix password when you're gone? Your kids, they deserve it. My bestie, no hesitation, or nobody, they can get their own subscription. And so, yes, most of you guys are taking this question very seriously, and I appreciate that nobody's getting it. They can get their own subscription. I love that a couple of y'all are going to let the kids take over the Netflix account and enjoy getting that for a little bit. So we got 67% say nobody, and 33% are saying that their kids are going to get it. But this brings up a really good point, right? Because again, all of these bills, all of these recurring subscriptions that we have online, they all have passwords. They all have financial obligations, not all of them, but a lot of them have financial obligations that are associated with them as well. And who's going to be responsible for that? And how are they going to find it in all of the mess? So one thing that you can do is to consider using like a password vault if you don't already use one. And so password managers, there's all sorts of different ones out there that people use. There's the Google Password Manager. There's LastPass, which has had some, spiciness in the past, but I think that a lot of people are back using LastPass now. There's the Apple password holder. There's all sorts of different ones, and that's great. To be able to keep your passwords in one place, but it's not going to do any good if nobody has your master password. So one thing that you might think about is, do you want to keep a list of all of your passwords with all of your accounts and just keep like a running list of those things and then update them manually? Like I know people that do it in black and white on a piece of paper, where they literally list every account that they think is relevant and every password that they have, and then they update it just as they change passwords, they keep it by their computer or somewhere, and they know where they tell their people where they would find that if they needed to access it. Obviously, that has a lot of pitfalls because sometimes we forget. Sometimes we update our password when we're on our phone and we're, at the Starbucks and we forgot what our password was. And so we have to reset it and we forget to change it on that physical space. A lot of people are using password managers, like I've mentioned before, that are auto updating, and they are sharing that master password or designating. Some of the accounts allow you to designate a person who would get access, like legacy access to your account. So Apple does that. If you have an iPhone, you can actually go into your iPhone and make that legacy designation through your iPhone. Facebook has a legacy designation that you can make. If you go into your settings on Facebook, you can actually name somebody. So again, these are really actionable, easy things for you to do, to go ahead and physically pick somebody who would be that person, who would be able to get access to these things so that they could manage them, and they could take care of them for you. This is one of those things that comes with a big disclaimer. Again, like if you are going to physically share all of this information with someone and not use these legacy protection things that are built in place. If you're just going to create the list, obviously there's the risk of data breach. If you just have a physical list, anybody could take that physical list if you've left it laying around. If you are using an online password manager and you're sharing that password with other people, then those people are going to have access to your account now. So really, we like to work with our clients to create legacy access if possible, so that you can have somebody who can sort of get the master key to get in to see all of these things. One thing that I would recommend that you do, and this is your action step for this week, from the digital security and digital legacy piece, is I do want for you to go ahead and make a list. Just again, as you're thinking, you can do in the notes on your phone. You can physically make a list on a notepad, but make a list of all of those places where you would want someone to have access. Like, what are all of your accounts that you can think of that you don't want just floating out there into the abyss, selling fake Oakleys to all of your friends and family for the rest of eternity? What are all of those accounts? So I want for you to make a list of all of those, so you even have a starting point of what it is that you're trying to gather. And then the other piece of that is, like, what do you want for people to do with those accounts? For social media platforms, for instance, some people don't want for that to live beyond their lifetime. They would want for their family to close down those accounts, and they would want for them to go away. Some people would want to have a memorial account so that people could share memories with each other, and it's sort of like a connection point for people who come from all different walks of life to be able to share memories on their page indefinitely. And I'll tell you, like, that has been really healing for me. Some of my friends that have passed that have had that option that stayed available, so that I can reconnect with folks from high school or from college, who I haven't thought about in many, many years, but we have a friend in common and we've been able to bond and share those memories. So social media isn't the devil when it comes to estate planning. It's actually a really amazing tool to be able to connect, but you need to be able to make those choices and you need to have control of that. So again, this is one of those things where I want for you to make the list of all of the accounts, and I want for you to have those conversations with people about what you would want to have happen. For our clients, we encourage them to make this part of their estate plan, and we help them to provide for these things with their families. So we help them to evaluate some of the available apps that are out there if they want to use one of these commercially available apps. For a lot of our clients, they don't. They have a family that has shared passwords. They choose to use some of these legacy tools that are built in, like Facebook and Apple. And really, we sit with people and we just talk them through all of their stuff, and some of the common ones that I've talked to you about today that come up. But then again, as we're doing their estate planning, we get to know more about what might be specific to them that we haven't talked about today that might be limited. So really, with those tools, though, it's about making sure that you're providing updated information and that you're sharing what your wishes are, and then picking that person that you trust with your digital presence. And so the interesting thing is, for a lot of people, that person is not their spouse when we're choosing it, and that's okay too. Because again, they don't want for their spouse to have that burden and that obligation. So they may choose a friend. Or they may choose, cousin Chad. Maybe this is a good job for cousin Chad, if he's responsible in that way, as long as he's not going to be selling the fake Oakleys on your Facebook page. But I do think that that's important because we've all seen that go wrong. And so choosing that right person needs to be someone who is digitally savvy, who's going to be able to access the tools that you're giving them access to, and who's going to follow through with your wishes, just like everybody else. So I'm going to give you a minute to add any questions that you want. I know we don't have very much time left, but I've given you guys some action items for today. I've given you guys the responsibility to make a list of your accounts, your digital accounts that you would want to have something to happen with them or for them to go away after you pass. I want for you to check your beneficiaries this week. It's 10 minutes, it's painless, but it's crucial. Just get it done. I've told you to think about having the conversations with the folks that you trust about what you would want for them to do, how you would want for them to make decisions for you, and to keep having those conversations with them. To just open up that conversation at the dinner table next week with your family about talking to them about their estate plan, talk to them about what your wishes are if something happens to you, and ask them and be curious about what their questions, what they would want to have happen as well. So we're gonna send you guys something next week. You're going to get a Christmas gift from the firm. So your first Christmas gift was the half price consultation, which we've already posted in the chat. So feel free to book that. If you want to call in, you're welcome to call in and schedule that as well. If you don't see the times that you want on there, I'm usually available. I leave a little bit of a buffer on my calendar to do next day appointments, or sometimes even same day appointments if something strikes you. And also, like, don't, if you don't want to do it right now, I get it, but just like schedule the appointment for after the new year. Just put it on your calendar, get it done so it's taken care of. So the consult's your first freebie, or half price deal that we're giving you. And then we're going to send a freebie next week. We're going to send out a checklist for you guys about just some of the things we talked about, and go into a bit more detail of giving you guys something so that you can have a tangible thing that you can do, even if you're not moving forward with an attorney right now, to get some of this estate planning stuff done, because some of it you can do on your own, and we really work with you to encourage that here at the firm. And I really hope that all of you guys have a great holiday. And I'm really looking forward to getting some of you guys on my books to meet with you guys and talk with you in the new year and get this thing checked off of your to-do list to make your life so much less stressful at 3 o'clock in the morning, and to know that you've been very caring and taking care of your family. I do see one more question that came in. I've got actually 2 more questions. One is financial power of attorney. Would your spouse automatically be able to take over? So yes, if they're joint accounts, absolutely, they would be able to go ahead and make those decisions. But financial power of attorney is super easy. Just go ahead and get that done, as soon as you can, just so that they could. Your spouse should be able to handle most things. However, maybe not if there's any ambiguity or anybody is feeling like that you guys maybe weren't in the best place. They can contest those things, where a power of attorney would give them sort of that added seal of approval that they are the right person. And then I've got a question quickly about the assets. Do the assets automatically transfer to the trust, or do you need to change the title before? This is an amazing question. This is there's a whole other webinar about this that we could do and talk about. It's about funding the trust. And so really that is a critical step. If we're wanting to put things into the trust, then we want to change the title after we create the trust. Then we would transfer title of the house into the trust. Any accounts, you can change them into the name of the trust, but again, that's something like as part of the estate planning process that we would go through the analysis and talk about which things need to be changed into the account, which things you want for us to move into the account for you, into the trust for you, which things you want to do yourself. And we would really take ownership of who's responsible for what, to go ahead and get all of those things moved into the trust. But the good news is that we believe in a belt and suspenders approach here. And so what that means is, yes, we create the trust. Yes, we transfer, we fund that trust with your assets. But if there's something that's out there that we didn't even know about, if you have some big fat inheritance that's coming in that you weren't expecting, if there's some lottery winnings that you weren't expecting, what we do is we create what's called a pour over will. And what that says is, hey, court, you don't need to worry about how to distribute this stuff. What my client has said that they want is they want for you to take all of the stuff that wasn't in the trust and pour it into the trust. And then we're just going to have everything to flow through the trust that way. So yes, we do lots of proactive planning. We do lots of funding during the lifetime. But just in case something is out there, something new has come in, you can still sleep at night when you wake up at 3 a.m. You don't have to worry about, calling me at 3 a.m. to say, oh my gosh, Shauna's, I forgot about this property. We need to put it in the trust tomorrow. It would pour over into the trust. So I hope that answers your questions. If you've got any other questions for me, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on social media at Peaceful Law. You can find me on my website, which is peacefullaw.com, to schedule an appointment or to pick up the phone and make a call. You can call us that way. And I always love to hear from people, always love to talk more about how we can help you. So I hope that you have a good rest of your day. And if you need anything from me, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great Christmas, everybody. I'll talk to you soon.